The year 1811, a settler by the name of Isaac Hutson left the lands of Ohio and moved westward along with his wife and children to seek the freedom of the frontier. They crossed Indiana Territory and initially settled on the east side of the Wabash River in present-day Sullivan County, Indiana. The country seemed alright, and Mr. Hudson didn't seem too concerned with the local natives. It was secure enough. A network of forts were placed along the major riverways to protect settlers and deter hostile Indians. Fort Terman was close by, Vincennes in the south, Fort Harrison in the north, and Fort LaMotte just across the river in Illinois Territory. There were friendlies on all sides, but plenty of Indians still lived in the region. For the most part, relations with the natives had been good. They had already been accustomed to the French, and the settlers and natives were neighbors who traded goods and sometimes invited each other over for supper. That was until the Treaty of Fort Wayne in 1809, when much of the land around the Wabash River, north of Vincennes, was sold to the Americans. Shawnee leader Tecumseh wasn't too happy about it, and called for united resistance among the tribes against the encroaching U.S. government. But that didn't stop Isaac Hudson. At the start of 1812, during the later half of winter, Hudson was impressed with the area known as LaMotte Prairie on the Illinois side of the Wabash and established a homestead there. It was just off the river and about 9 miles north of Fort LaMotte, which is now the town of Palestine, Illinois. By early spring, he moved his family into Illinois Territory. Keep in mind, this was only a few months after William Henry Harrison marched his troops up to Tippecanoe and destroyed Prophetstown. And the War of 1812 was only a few months away, so needless to say, there was a lot of friction. Not long after the Hudsons moved in, another settler by the name of Dixon built a home nearby. The people at Fort LaMotte warned them to build closer to the blockhouses, but they were ignored. On one April afternoon, Isaac went to the nearest mill for supplies. He began the trip in the afternoon and wasn't expected to return until sundown. Meanwhile, Dixon wasn't far from the Hudson place, putting poles in the ground for fencing. Suddenly, he was attacked by a small party of natives. They struck him down and mutilated his body. His chest was cut open, and his heart was pulled out and stuck on a pole. The raiders then moved on to the Hudson home. What actually happened we'll never know, but in some accounts there was a local Indian known as the Pet who witnessed the attack, and in one version he's actually taking part in the raid on the home. John Eaton, whose family is one of the first settlers in the area, claims that the Pet told him that the Indians entered the Hudson cabin, snatched an infant from Mrs. Hudson's arms, and threw it into a boiling soap kettle. Amongst the screaming and panic, the Indians attacked the family with their tomahawks and possibly killing a few of the other children. Then they barred the cabin door, set the home ablaze, and vanished into the prairie. Isaac was on his way home when he noticed an orange glow on the horizon. He knew something was wrong. He whipped his horse into full speed. When he arrived, his worst fears were reality. He frantically rode around the cabin, calling out to his family, but there was no response. Only the sound of a roaring fire. He had some hope that maybe they escaped to one of the neighbors, and he rode past the settlements calling out to his beloved, but no one answered. On that spring afternoon, Isaac Hudson lost everything, and became a hateful, vengeful man. He vowed to kill all the Indians who crossed his path, friend or foe. Local rangers did attempt to pursue the attackers, but they were already long gone. In some versions of the story, Isaac had a teenage daughter who survived the attack but was taken captive. He tried to track her down with the Rangers, but her fate is unknown. It's possible she was eventually adopted into the tribe. The identity of the tribes responsible is also unknown, but it's suspected that either the Delaware or Kickapoos were involved since they occupied the region around Fort LaMotte. Isaac was said to have swam across the Wabash back in Indiana Territory and made his way to Fort Terman, where he stayed for a little while before moving to Fort Harrison, where he enlisted with the local militia. It's uncertain whether or not he got his revenge or if he even got to satisfy his bloodlust. It's possible that he took part in the siege of Fort Harrison in September of 1812, fighting alongside the future president Zachary Taylor. We don't really know, but we do know he was stationed there, and one day with a group of men heading south of the fort, they were ambushed by Indians and Isaac Hudson was shot through the head. Today, the village of Hudsonville, Illinois is named in his honor. Near where the massacre took place, there's a small pioneer village and historical marker. There is some confusion with the timeline of this event. The marker says the attack happened in 1813, but we know it happened in April of 1812 because William Henry Harrison mentions it in a letter to William Eustis, who was the Secretary of War at the time. The letter is dated April 14th, 1812, and Harrison says that the attack happened that previous Saturday. 1813 is probably when Isaac himself was killed. The size of Hudson's family also varies with different accounts. Sometimes he has 7 kids, 5 or 4. Also, the young man Dixon who was killed is said to be part of the family, likely Isaac's brother-in-law. Some accounts mention the teenage daughter, others don't, so I don't know what happened to her. There is record that Isaac remarried in May of 1813 to Rebecca Sturman. It's not clear whether or not they had children, but, good for him. Hopefully, towards the end there, he might have thought he could have started over. Either way, it's a sad story, and unfortunately there are many like it around this time period. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something along the way. This has been Frontier Lore. Take care.